Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have another incredible guest, man. I'm so excited for today. We've been now in the same circle, speaking on the same stage for a few months now. And I had no idea who this was 4 months ago. None. And I'm so grateful that we ended up in the same room and connecting for so many reasons. I can't really describe them all, but I'm going to try to describe a few of them. Bill Schuffenhauer is the nicest person, like one of the nicest people I've ever met. His heart is purely to serve. He did what he needed to do to get to a position where he can focus on serving rather than trying to benefit himself. He's great at benefiting himself, which is awesome. And also another reason why we're having him on here, because he mastered both things, how to benefit himself and how to be great and make everybody in the room feel absolutely loved, cared about, like they're the only person, and that he's there to absolutely 100% serve you. So that balance, it's not easy for a lot of people. I know that some people haven't experienced me that way yet. I hope that it comes, but I think that it's a valuable thing. So Bill, these are just a few things. I'm going to let him go into more detail because his story is absolutely incredible. But he went from nothing, which I'll let him describe what that is, to being an Olympic athlete in 2002, right?
Yeah.
2002. They've screwed us over forever. Right. 2002 in the Utah Winter Olympics. I was going to have at the beginning of this, I still might add it in there, but the Jamaican bobsled music, because he went from nothing to becoming a bobsledder and winning silver medalist, right? In the Olympics. And then from that, ups and downs of what that looks like, going from nothing to fame, but then also recovering and turning his success into a worldwide entrepreneur business influence person who is really, really, really targeted for success long-term. And so I'm so excited to introduce you to him. And also I'm just excited to ask him tons of questions. So Bill, tell us a little bit about your childhood though, how you grew up, how did you end up at the Olympics? How did you end up winning the Olympics? And then what transpired after that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Samuel. It's a pleasure. And as you said, it's great that you and I met because we both met each other not having any understanding of what you did and what I did. And I was like, man, this is amazing, right? But to answer your story, I had the blessing, and I do say it that way, the blessing of growing up in a childhood where I was born to a mom who is a very well-known drug addict here in Utah back in the day, practiced, alcoholism, prostitution, basically the street life. She was everybody in the system, police, courts, judges, attorneys knew my mom because she was known as the street mom here in Utah. And that's just what I was exposed to, eating out of garbage cans, panhandling on the streets, not knowing where my next meal's coming from, watching my mom and her friends shoot up meth all the time and just the abuse, gang violence, drug violence, you name it. I grew up with that as a kid. And obviously, when you grow up in that, you really think that's kind of the normal life until you see something different. And, for me, that was normal all the way up until about 7th grade. I've seen some of the worst things that a kid could have ever seen, and I would wish upon nobody in their, even as an adult. But one time when my mom, I was with my mom because I bounced back and forth with my mom, my grandmother, foster homes in the state. But my mom had gotten in trouble again, and the state said, hey, you know what, your mom's going to go to jail. And they kind of gave my mom an option or more so, they gave my grandmother the option, you can either take your grandson in or he's going to go to his 18th foster home. So fortunately, my grandma took me in, and I moved from, Salt Lake to Roy, Utah. And at the time, there was like no kids of color up in Roy. I was like the only kid of color that went to Roy in 7th grade. And so I really stuck out like a sore thumb. It was a pretty uncomfortable position, but it was also an opportunity. And the opportunity was like the first time that I noticed kids around me that seemed really happy. Every day they came to school with new clothes and new shoes. They didn't seem to like want for anything. And just the energy that I noticed in them was something that was really, really attractive to me. And so without really knowing what to do, I kind of took notice of this one kid that really stuck out like a sore thumb. I talk about him a lot in when I do, speaking events. He's documented in my international documentary called Against All Odds. But I just followed him around. And one day I followed him out. Didn't know where he was going or what he was doing, but I was creeping on him, if you will, and followed him out after school. And he was out with a whole bunch of other kids, and they were, jumping over stuff and handing, each other this little baton looking thing. And I was like, man, that looks really cool. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if I could do that. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've been really good at running from the cops and jumping fences. I could do this stuff right here. And, lo and behold, they were all out at track practice. And that was my first introduction to it. And, I thought, I want to change my stars. I was tired as a kid, just being bounced around so much that, as a 7th grader, I came to the realization that one day I was going to have to grow up. One day I was going to want to have a family of my own. And I didn't want to expose my family to the same architecture that my mom had built for us, which is just extremely chaotic. And so my first year, I went and tried out for the team, was doing really, really well. Lo and behold, they have that saying, you can take the kid out of the streets, but you can't take the street out of the kid. And I mouthed off to the coaches. And that happened in both track and field and baseball tryouts. I went to baseball tryouts too, because that's what I'd seen on TV and thought that was cool. But ended up getting kicked out of both. And had to kind of that same summer, I ended up getting in trouble because me and a friend decided we're going to break into a bike shop and steal some bikes, and we did, and we ended up getting caught for that. And so when I got caught for that, I was just like, man, I'm not going in the direction that I really want to go, right? And my grandma was just pretty much fed up, and my family that was around was fed up because I was just this kid who was causing all sorts of chaos. And, I had to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, this is not what I was planning on doing. What do I do to kind of get back on path? And, for whatever reason, I decided to reach out to my teachers as well as the track coaches and just say, hey, I need some help. I don't know what I'm doing. And, they were willing to go the extra effort and stay after school and help me first and foremost get my grades up from all F's and a D- to eventually a 3.8. When I left junior high school. So that really helped me to understand the importance and the value of my education and how it could serve its purpose, not just for school, but in life in general. And, worked a little bit on my attitude. And so I needed a massive attitude adjustment back then. And lo and behold, when I tried out for the track team the next year, made the team and did really, really well. And just really attached myself to learning at the highest level what I could. And so I learned from my coaches and my teachers and other kids that were in a good position. And that just served me really, really well throughout high school and college. And, my coaches in high school, when I got involved with high school sports, originally, I did football as well as track, but they said, hey, in junior high, we noticed you were doing all these events, long jump, high jump, shot put, discus, whatever. And there's this event called the decathlon, and we think you'd be really good at it. And of course, I didn't know what it was. And they said, basically you're, considered, you got to do all these events. It's 10 events. You're the first person to practice and the last one to leave. And I was like, oh my gosh, that seems like a lot. And, they said one thing that really sparks the change. And they said, your decathlete's considered one of the best athletes in the world. And I was sold. I don't care what it takes, but I wanted to change my stars and just pursued it. And, had a really great career. Throughout that time, I ended up had a mutual friend that was military. So the Hendersons, Bill and Barbara Henderson, that they adopted me. And that really is further solidified, like learning about like discipline from a military level, which has helped throughout my career and my life as well. And, as I was the kid that, graduated high school, I had offers from every university in the country, some internationally, and decided to stay local and just focus on track and field. And, again, like the whole goal and the dream was to, yes, change my stars and not be another statistic that just some kid who grew up in the system continued to be in the system. And I utilized that negative energy of that my mom created for me to continue to try and excel in life. And throughout that time, I tried to go back and find my mom several times and get her to change. And it wasn't until, fast forwarding, all the way to, I'm going to jump back and forth here for a second, but when I did make the 2002 team and I decided to not try and force my mom to make any change, but I just led by example, is when she finally, made her big change. But in between, college and that period of time, I trained for the 96 Olympics in decathlon, trained for the 2000 Sydney Olympics in the decathlon, was actually favored to make the 2000 Sydney Games, was ranked top 5 in the world, but ended up getting an injury 2 weeks before Olympic trials. I'd already qualified, qualified for Olympic trials, qualified for Olympics, made the Olympic standard. And then when I had that injury, basically really kind of threw me for a loop. That was kind of probably like my first real massive episode of feeling defeated, depression, so on, and that my Olympic dreams were just destroyed from an injury. But Sam, as well as I do, when you lead an aligned life, whether you're young or you're old, opportunities just continue to pop up. And that's what happened for me, that somebody said, hey, there's the Olympics in Salt Lake City. You should do the Olympics in Salt Lake. And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? You're talking about Sydney, not Salt Lake. And they're like, no, the Winter Olympics. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I don't ski. I don't play hockey. Damn sure not a men's pairs figure skater. So I don't know what you're talking about. But they're like, no, there's a sport called bobsled. That's track and field guys and football guys that are fast and powerful and athletic are really good in transitioning into it. And, they named awesome guys, Willie Galt, Edwin Moses, some big name players that this transitioned into bobsled. And they said, you know what, how cool would that be? The Olympics are only a year and 3 months away, which realistically nobody switches sports a year and 3 months before the Olympics and has the expectation of making the Olympic team, let alone going and winning a medal. But my team and I just got together and we said, you know what, why not me? Right? We really truly simplified it and said, why not me? Like, we're in great shape. The goal was to be an Olympian. Didn't matter if it was in track and field, badminton, whatever. It was to be an Olympian and represent the United States of America and change our stars. And then, one of my coaches says, how cool would that be if we could create a story that you grew up on the streets of Salt Lake City and then turned your life around to actually make the Olympics in Salt Lake City? And I was like, yeah, let's just go for it. We got nothing to lose. And, just put the same effort that we had pursuing the Sydney Olympics in 2000 into the 2002 Olympics. And, a year and three months later, ended up making the Olympic team and winning the first Olympic medal for Team USA in our own backyard in 46 years, right? And so the goal and the vision and the story that we wanted to create, because we put it out there to the universe, and stayed with the game plan and created a goal and executed at the highest level, we were actually able to write that story, right? And in fact, during the competition of the 2002 Olympics, we're getting ready to compete and it's on, television, and the sports commentators are talking about the teams, and they're like, all right, now here's Team USA. And they're naming off my driver. Todd Hayes is an MMA fighter, comes from Del Rio, Texas, played football here, like all these amazing accolades, right? And they go through all my teammates and they get to me and they're like, Now, this guy, Bill Schuffenhauer, who just shows up here at the Olympics right off the streets of Salt Lake City, right? And I was like, did he just say right off the streets of Salt Lake City? And I remember, like, when I heard it, I was honestly pretty upset at first, because I did have a lot of things that I had accomplished at that point, right? But then when I reflected back on the why we even decided to pursue this, the why was really amplified by him saying Bill Schuffenhauer right off the streets of Salt Lake City, because that's exactly really what happened, right? I came out of nowhere to make the team, and then lo and behold, obviously, like I just mentioned, won the first Olympic medal for Team USA in 46 years. And my college track and field coach always used to tell me during practice, anytime you did something really well in practice, he would say, any fool could do it once. So go out and do it again and repeat it to prove that you actually can accomplish that. And so, from there, I decided to do 2 more Olympics. But, from that time at the 2002 Olympics, that told my story on a platform of the Olympic and Paralympic Games that reached billions of people around the world. Right. And that's when I started getting into the motivational speaking and telling my story verbatim when I did these things. Like the movie A Knight's Tale. If anybody's seen that show, A Knight's Tale, right? This peasant kid grows up, is watching the knights battle in front of the king and says, hey, someday I want to be a knight. And just like always, right, there's always somebody in the peanut gallery that says, no, you can't do that for whatever reasons. And so I just looked at myself as that little peasant kid that I grew up homeless on the streets, and I was never supposed to amount to anything, but I wasn't going to allow anyone to defeat my goals and my dreams of trying to accomplish something so far outside of the box. It's mostly incomprehensible for most people. But we did it, and we did it the right way. And, really fast forwarding to like when I retired in 2010, which was another massive learning lesson. I had a really significant loss of identity because I was so used to traveling the world, competing, winning medals, national, World Cup, World Championship, Olympic medals, White House visits, some of the biggest celebrity golf tournaments and events all around the world. And when I retired in 2010, that all really came to a stop. And I failed because I didn't have a game plan for post-retirement. I was just like, I'm done. I'm going to take a break. And then whatever happens, happens. Because, a long time ago, somebody had always told me, if you make the Olympics, doors will open up for you and opportunities will be there. But I didn't really pay attention to what that meant. It's kind of like when they say, if you build it, they will come. There's truth to that, but you still have to grind and create more after that. And I was standing there, like when I retired, I was like, okay, where's all the opportunities? Where are they? Right. And nothing happened. And that led me down a really, really negative path from from 2010 until about 2018. And that's where I got introduced to one of my business partners now, Chad LaFavor of TMIC Global. And, when I say a really bad path, I was isolated, victim mentality, alcoholic, addict, just really, really bad. Ended up like leading up to a real serious suicide attempt in 2016. And my architecture, which I was 100% responsible for creating, was just an absolute hot mess. As dark as it could be, as lonely as it could be, as victim mentality as it could be. And when I met Chad, he said, hey, I'm doing this online program called TMIC Global, which stands for the most important conversation. It's a coaching platform that we're going to take globally someday. And if you're interested, I'd love to have you on board. And I was like, well, it's not really my thing, but I was like, I ain't got nothing else better to do. So sure, I'll jump on. And the first conversation that we had was talking about, do you lead a life by default or do you lead a life by design? And as I sat and listened, I was just like, wow, like I lead a life 100% by default because nothing is going well in my life. My life is absolutely chaotic. I'm ready to check out again because I'm just so miserable. And the conversation continued, Chad said, well, if you lead a life by default, it's not too late to take accountability for your architecture in which you created, declutter it, declutter all the things that aren't serving you. So basically all the things aren't going well, and then go back to the drawing board and recreate by design. And I had nothing else to hold on to. So I held on to that. I literally attached myself to that and basically took the mindset I had of pursuing the Olympic Games and put it into this next venture, basically to save my life. Not knowing if it was going to work, not knowing what was next, having no idea what was going to happen at all, but I had no other option. And as I followed the path of listening to this coach make recommendations on what I could do, I just took it to heart and I tried to put 110% into everything that he was talking about. And, obviously I'm going to jump forward here so we can jump into some of the questions. I decluttered 100% of my entire life. Friends, family members that didn't serve me, sold everything in my house. I moved away from where I was, surrounded myself to more influential people, and just started the process of rebuilding my life by design. And from 2018 until now, 2023, wherever we are, 24, 23, I went from a guy who was absolutely, completely miserable, depressed, suicidal, alcoholic, addiction, victim mentality, couldn't afford to do anything, didn't have the right friends around me. I was in trouble significantly with the law, to now where I have none of that. I've got no issues with the law. I just got married to the most amazing human being. I'm a managing partner in 7 companies that have a global reach. Conversations where we're talking about hundreds of millions, if not tens of billions of dollars of investment. I'm happier than I could ever have imagined. I've got amazing people like you, Sam, and the new gen family to rely on or whatever. But, again, back in the day when things were bad, I couldn't ever have imagined like my life going well. I mean, back then I recall very clearly begging God or the universe or whoever, I just need one day of relief, please, just one day of relief. And now I wake up every day going, oh my gosh, just another amazing day. My freaking day is amazing. Like, this is amazing. Something happens amazing. And, it is because of me really taking 100% accountability for my own life and not relying on anyone else to fix anything for me. Now, doesn't mean that I didn't have some really great mentors along the way, but I also had to allow them into my world to play that role. And, and now I just, one of the things that I figured out during that reconstruction or rebranding of myself was creating my pillars of focus in life. And as I reflected on my life, I realized that there had been so many people, coaches, family, friends that had played a role in helping me to level up in certain situations in my life, that I realized that I need to have service as my number one pillar for focus. And, you mentioned that, I do great in that space, and I also do really well for myself. But the reason I do really well for myself is because I give service to others. And the more service I give and provide to others, those opportunities that take care of me and my family just show up organically. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of being of service to others. And there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it as well. But I just take a look at everything that I have an opportunity to create in life is a huge learning lesson and an opportunity to be a role model and serve others and gain knowledge and just really enjoy this life that we're meant to enjoy and the human beings around us.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for all of that. We are not going to have enough time to get through all these questions, but I'm going to try and pick the most important ones for us. I want to just call back to some of the things that you said very in the beginning. And that was you had this life of normal with your mom, and that's what you thought normal was. And then you went and were exposed to something else and found out that that wasn't actually normal and there was something else. Well, I think there's a lot of people who are left stuck in the land of normal, and normalization happens at every layer of society. It doesn't just happen on the streets. There's people who are living their normal job, making $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year, $2 million a year, $10 million a year, $1 billion a year, and they're stuck at their normal. And they don't actually know or comprehend what the other levels of normal look like. And all of the normals are all existing at the same time. What is normal is what you're most familiar with and what you surround yourself with. And so the things that I wrote as far as questions that I think are worth asking yourself, okay, just journal about it. What is normal to me? What would a normal person be watching on TV? What would a normal person, how would they spend their day? How much time would they spend with their wife? How much time would they spend with their kids? What would they eat? Like, what would normal look like? And then ask yourself, am I okay with that? Or do I want to be a different normal? And then you go find a different group and say, well, what's normal in this group? Okay. Some people, it's normal to be just jacked, and normal is working out 4 hours a day in the gym. And that's the normal thing. That's not what I do right now, but that's just a normal thing for some people. They do that because that's important to them. So finding out, what is your normal? And then I'm curious, and you've had lots of different experiences, but what's a way that somebody who maybe they don't want to radically change, like you said, you sold everything, sold your house, moved to, that's the type of person I am too. Like, I'm like, let's go to a whole nother state and let's radically shock our system, like jumping in cold water, even though I hate cold water and don't do that very often. But it's the same thing emotionally. Like, how do you systematically expose yourself to other normals so that you can level up?
Yeah, obviously you kind of nailed part of what we're talking about on the head. Like, I don't ever recommend anyone do it to the extreme that I did. You have to be in a pretty bad position with not a whole lot of hope.
And you were not married. You didn't have kids. I mean, like, there was a lot of things that allowed for you to do what you did, that somebody who's married, been married for 10 years, got 4 or 5 kids, they don't have the same latitude to shake up their life without affecting other people, which is kind of what you were running from and away from your own mom, with a chaotic lack of structure. So there's a fine line here. I'm just curious how to do it systematically.
Yeah. Well, kind of what I do, like with some of my clients, is I actually have them write out what I call my top 20 list. And on that one list, I have them write out like the top 20 things that are going really, really, really well in their life. And then in the other top 20, it's all the things that are not going well in their life. It's not serving them. It's chaotic for them, brings them stress, brings them anxiety, whatever it is. And sometimes it can be more than 20, but it's just about taking a look at those things and saying, okay, how can we start decluttering these from our architecture, right? And if it's something that they're doing with their job or something, like, okay, if you're not doing what you enjoy and you love doing as far as work, what would you really like to enjoy, right? Like, let's just start having that conversation about, what is something you'd want to do, right? Because as well as I do, sometimes people get to their 30s, 40s, or 50s and be like, oh, it's too late for me. It's never too late. You can do anything you want at any point in time in your life. I mean, I didn't make my transition until I was 46 years old, and I thought the same thing, like, life is over. And so I just started like really trying to like have these conversations with myself. Like, what would I really, really enjoy doing on a daily basis, day in and day out? What does it look like? Do I know people in that industry? And if I do, like, start asking them, hey, Sam, I know that you do this. Like, tell me more about your career and why you do it and how you love to do it and what you don't like about it, right? And it's just about you have to be a little open and vulnerable to kind of pursue that like thought of moving to something else or doing something else. Because so many of us, we get stuck in doing the same thing and thinking, oh, my dad told me when I was younger, you just got to get this job and you got to work hard and you got to do it this way, right? And that's what we were mentally brought up to do. But the reality is like, no, you don't. I mean, we get people that come here from all over the world with not a freaking penny in their pocket and create massive success because they have the belief that they can be something bigger and better, right? And so, they got to have that belief that they can too. And it is a process. It's not going to happen overnight, but just really kind of taking a look at the architecture again in what you've built and saying, okay, what about this is working and what is not working? And then we take the things that are not working and say, okay, let's address these depending on what they are, right? There could be a million different solutions to what that might look like. But just not being willing to settle for unhappiness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, as you said, that comes with being intentional with the questions, being intentional with the outcomes, and then acting on them, because action is sometimes one of the scariest things. Even if you know you want to do it, taking action and surrounding yourself with people who believe in you and ignoring all the crap that says you can't do it. You can't allow the negative into your mind if you actually want to win. I don't even like to say that, negative or win.
Yeah.
Your goals are going to be accomplished when you determine that they're going to be accomplished. And until you determine that they're going to be accomplished, it's unlikely that you're going to achieve the level of success that you want. And that could be any level of success. You have to determine that that is the end all be all. And he proved it in your bobsledding. But I think that I want to pull out two things, and I'm going to gloss over some of this, but his environment as a child that he raised with has different communication styles, different rules of engagement, different everything. And so when he gets put into a system, public school system, where he's now has the opportunity to join a new normal, join a track team, join a hierarchy of authority, join all of that. And in certain areas, I imagine in somewhat in the street life, yes, you have authority and we all know who's in charge, but also there's always people trying to challenge authority. And that's like allowed, and not just allowed, but it's encouraged in a lot of ways to see who's coming up. Well, in other systems, challenging authority is not okay. And it will get you, because the person who actually has authority in that scenario says, no, I'm not being challenged, and they'll kick you out. And so that happened to him at a young age. So even though he had this desire, hey, I want to be different, I want to grow, if you don't know the language of success, no matter how much you want it, it's not coming. And this, I actually interviewed a linguistic anthropologist. So she studied,
wow,
I know, it's like a what? So she studied the anthropology of language patterns. And what they found was people who are in poverty, doesn't matter your color, your race, whatever, but these sections of our country and really the world, they don't have the language of success. They don't know how to communicate in the language of success. They don't know how to ask about how much is a loan or interest or how to buy a house. They don't even know that you buy houses, that you steal houses. That's how you get a house. You go in with a gun and you steal it. Like, what are you talking about buying? I don't have to pay for crap, right? They don't, it's not that they're bad people. Their frame of what they understand is different. They don't have the words. So you go and say, well, this is what's happening. Do you understand that? And they're like, sure, because right now I'm in handcuffs and you're not. So I guess I understand it. You know, they don't know what's being told to them. And then you'll see this all the time. People went to prison, went to jail for the wrong reasons, admitting to stuff they didn't know. They actually spend time learning, getting educated. And they're like, wait a second, I was not given to. They'll go fight their own case. They don't hire a lawyer. They go fight their own case and they win and they get restitution because, and it's not, again, I'm not saying it's the police officer's fault or the system's fault, because unfortunately, a lot of the people at that level of normal don't know what the words mean either. They're parroting what they were taught, just like the person who's being incarcerated. So it's just kind of an interesting thing that yours is a stark example, but it happens at every level of our lives. And to take a step back and recognize the patterns, I think is really important. What happened then when you got into the ability to brand your story? I'm curious because I only know your story. I don't know the 4 other guys on the bobsled team. I don't know their stories. I don't know how much. I understand that every person gets a little bit of the spotlight because they're Olympic athletes and it's their due. Do you feel like your story has gotten more traction because of what it is than those 3 stories, the other stories? And if so, is it ever, or was it ever a conversation between the 4 of you guys? Was there ever any feeling like, man, that sucks. He's getting the limelight. He's getting the interview. He's getting all this stuff, because we're still human. And especially at that level of competition, you're not just human, you're a freaking competitor, and you think that way. And it's not that it's bad. It just is. So I'm just curious, how'd you work through that?
Yeah, when it comes to the bobsled and that kind of a team sport, typically the driver is the one who gets all the praise because he's a driver. He's the one who's in the forefront of everyone. And so when you have a story that could resonate, locally, globally, or whatever, it's kind of up to you to kind of continue to pursue that. And everyone on the team wants everyone to succeed at the highest level. We never had anybody like, oh, can't believe you get more attention than I am. We train together, we win together, we fail together, right? It's a family, and it's one of the families that I miss. That's one thing I miss is the camaraderie of sports, is that everyone always had your back, right? And I remember the only thing we ever talked about is my driver was white. Two of the guys on my team were black. I didn't know what the hell I was at the time. But there was a big talk of like the two first African Americans to win a medal in the Winter Olympics. And that went to my two teammates. Lo and behold, several years later, through 23andMe, I find out that my real dad's black. So now I got to go change all the records. But no, it's, in the world of sports, even my competitors, people always ask that question, like, don't you just hate your competitors? And like, no, we all work together. And, if I'm competing against Sam, I want Sam to be at his very best. So when I whip his ass, there's no excuses, and vice versa. Sam wants me to be at my very best. So when he beats me, there's no excuses. And, once I win first or Sam wins first, we can look at each other, shake each other in hand, tell you, I love you, brother, and congratulations. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's what's really one of the things that, we're missing from this world is like that camaraderie and the collaboration for us all to succeed together, And, I always have the saying that collaboration kills, and in a good way. Anytime I've collaborated with different groups and organizations, I've succeeded at the highest level. And that's just what I continue to use in my day-to-day life and my businesses.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I'm grateful for that. I figured it would be something like that, but you never know because and I don't think it's actually hard feelings. I think just sometimes in jest, it's like, man, he's getting the limelight, but it doesn't matter. Right? You guys are all champions. I'm curious though, because part of it is the branding, and each person gets to choose their own branding. Even in that bobsled team, you've got two people choosing the branding story of their past, the driver choosing his branding story, and you get to write your own branding story. A lot of people don't think that they get to write their own branding story. They think, well, he got to because he did something amazing, so he gets to write that. How do you help? Like, talk to that person who's thinking that thought. Well, I can't write my branding story. I don't have all these TV deals. I don't have the limelight of whatever. How would you communicate to that person? You do get to write your own branding story, and it doesn't have to turn into money. It doesn't have to turn into business, but you are in charge of your story. Nobody else is.
Yeah, no, you again hit the nail on the head. My first words of advice is stop comparing yourself to the rest of the world. Right. I was part of an Olympic Games that had more Olympic medalists in Olympic history for Team USA than any other one that we've had. And so, you were up against like trying to fight to like get your name out there. But the reality is like, I just didn't compare myself to anyone else. I was like, I've got my own story that's going to resonate with a certain amount of people. And that's all you can do is focus on that right there, because everyone does have a story. It doesn't have to be something like mine or something like you came from foreign country with no money in your wallet and then created something. You could have the story of just, finding the value in your own story and really focusing, looking in the mirror and finding that value in your own story is going to, really resonate with people, especially when you embrace it, because when you embrace your own story, that energy comes out and people resonate with that too. So yeah, just not comparing yourself with anyone else's story and just focusing on what you have to offer.
Yeah, I love it because so many people, and I talked about this at our last event, but so many people, they think that the really impactful parts of their story are probably the parts where your mom was known in the system of the drug addict, that you were a drug addict eventually. Right? You relapsed into that type of lifestyle. They think that those things are actually their liabilities in their life. They don't want people to know. They don't want to share it. When in reality, your biggest liability of a story, the thing that you think you're most embarrassed about, that people are going to shame you the most for, that's actually your biggest asset. And choosing to identify your unique story and share it even if it's quote unquote embarrassing or looks bad, the fact that you can share it and share that you learned something from it, that turns it into the best thing that you can do, not the worst thing. And so I hope that you take that away. We are up against the clock, so we're not going to be able to ask all the rest of these wonderful questions.
We can always do a part two.
Yeah, part two. Also, where would somebody go and follow you? Where's the best place to follow, connect with you if they had questions about nonprofits? I know you're deep in that world, or just want to be coached by you.
Yeah, they can just go to my website, theolympianspeaks.com. Again, theolympianspeaks.com, or if anybody knows the link tree, it's my link tree is the link tree / my Bill Schuffenhauer, right?
His name will be on the podcast because it's not an easy one.
Yeah, SCHUFFENHAUER. So if they type it into the URL, it'll pop up somewhere.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, hey, I want to get you off to your meeting, but I super appreciate you taking the time to share this with the audience. And just consider, where would you be? Where could you be if you made a decision? It was just a few years ago that he was in a very different place. He's completely changed his family stars, his wife, future, whatever that looks like, whether he has kids, all because he made a choice. And it was always inside of him to make that choice. So more power to you. I'm grateful for you, and we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.